Dad, get out. You're fired. My son George's words hit me like a sudden gust of winter wind, sharp and cutting, leaving me reeling. His eyes glittered with cold contempt, a mirror of the boy I had raised, now transformed into a stranger. For 11 years, I had poured every ounce of myself into Bright Path Solutions, building it from scratch, sacrificing time, relationships, and nights of rest, working tirelessly while George and Isabel flourished in comfort. And now, over a petty argument, over a trivial mistake in judgment, he cast me out as if I were nothing more than garbage. I silently packed my things, my hands trembling with a mix of disbelief and simmering anger, but already a plan was ripening in my mind. There was a document hidden in his safe, the key to all his dirty secrets, all the ways he had twisted what I built into something hollow. Thursday would be fun. I wouldn't just leave, I would reclaim everything that was stolen from me and expose the deceit I had unknowingly nurtured. The conference room had buzzed moments earlier with the low hum of projectors and murmurs of collaboration, but George's voice cut through like a scalpel. "You're stuck in the past, Dad," he snapped, his Rolex ticking sharply as he jabbed a finger at me, each motion deliberate, each word designed to wound. Papers littered the table, stamped confidential, carrying the weight of deals I had signed, agreements I had overseen, and visions I had nurtured. I sat rigid, knuckles pale around a folder that contained not just numbers and contracts, but pieces of my life. 11 years of blood, sweat, and late nights, gone in an instant, tossed aside like yesterday's news. Isabel leaned back, earrings glinting like tiny daggers, her tone smooth, venomous. "Louis, your audits are slowing us down," she said, her words dripping with disdain, a sharp contrast to the smiles and praise I had once received from her. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting to the floor, unable to intervene, witnesses to the obliteration of a legacy. "You're fired," George repeated, as if saying it twice would make it real. The words sliced through the air, leaving a silence that pressed against my ears. I rose slowly, chair scraping against polished floors, the folder trembling in my grip. "You forget who built this company, George," I murmured, voice low but steady, a whisper of warning. He smirked, tossing my folder onto the table. Papers fluttered like wounded birds, helpless in their descent. "Progress doesn't care about your sacrifices, old man," he said, his eyes cold, unyielding. Isabel's lips curled in silent agreement, a quiet accomplice in the erasure of my years. I turned and walked out, each step deliberate, each movement measured. The glass walls reflected nothing but my own shadow, a ghost in the empire I had forged. In the hallway, the eyes of my former colleagues avoided mine, glancing elsewhere, unwilling to acknowledge the truth. My office, once a sanctuary, now felt violated, the desk and shelves holding reminders of victories now hollow. On the desk, Eric's photos smiled at me, a beacon of the life and love I had not forsaken. I slipped it into my pocket, leaving awards, plaques, and trinkets behind, tangible symbols of a legacy now questioned. My hand brushed against a folder marked "Confidential" on Isabel's desk as I passed, and a spark of possibility flickered in my mind. George's voice echoed from the conference room. "Now we're free," he muttered to Isabel. "Free from what? From the truth? From the consequences?" The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, my reflection staring back at me, Eric's photo warm against my chest. The office smelled of old coffee and paper, a time capsule of ambition, sweat, and sleepless nights. I stood alone, recalling the first big deal I had signed at 35, the same age George was now. He had once run to me, proud and trusting. Now he plotted to erase me. Awards clinked as I packed them into cardboard boxes, but one caught my eye, a joint award with George from 5 years ago, his grin genuine then, untainted by ambition or cruelty. I left it behind, a relic of what had been. A letter from Eric slipped from a drawer, folded and worn. "You're stronger than you think." I tucked it away, letting the words steal my resolve. The sacrifices, the nights away, the devotion, all of it thrown back in my face. For what? So he could spit in my efforts and claim the empire as his own? No, Thursday would be interesting. And I would make sure he understood that nothing built with love, sweat, and honesty could ever be truly stolen. The hallway whispered as I left, shadows stretching along the polished floors like silent witnesses. Colleagues glanced away, their pity sharper than George's scorn, their faces masks of polite avoidance. At the security desk, old Mike hesitated, his expression torn. "Louis, I'm sorry," he said quietly. I nodded, managing a small gesture of acknowledgement, my eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. There was respect there, a faint comfort, but no time for sentiment. Outside, Chicago's rain greeted me like a cold, wet reminder of reality, drenching the cardboard box in my hands. The city roared around me, horns blaring, footsteps splashing through puddles, life moving forward, indifferent to my struggle. My coat clung to my shoulders, heavy with water, yet I pressed onward, each step deliberate, carrying the weight of years of betrayal. The box sagged, soaked, and cumbersome, but Eric's photo remained safe in my pocket, a talisman against despair. I tossed my office key into a trash can. Metal clanged against wet garbage, a final goodbye to a life I had built and was forced to abandon. In my car, the smell of worn leather mingled with rain-soaked memories. I sat, listening to the rhythmic drumming of raindrops against the roof, and thought of last year's deal, George's nervous laugh echoing in my mind as he deflected when I questioned a client's numbers. He had brushed it off, confident I'd never look further, but I had. Later, tucked in his safe, the report revealed enough to ruin him, a single page damning and precise. The engine growled to life beneath my hands as I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. That document was my chance. George thought he'd buried me beneath his arrogance, but I was far from done. Not yet. Rain tapped the windows of my suburban home, a steady rhythm against the quiet, each droplet marking time, patience, and resolve. I sat at the kitchen table, Eric's photo propped before me. Her eyes seemed to follow mine, urging me onward, steadying my resolve. The house creaked under the weight of old wood and older memories, walls holding decades of laughter, love, and betrayal. A family photo hung on the wall, Eric, George at 10, and me smiling at a simpler, happier time. That boy was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, someone capable of calculated cruelty. A month ago, I'd stood in George's office, catching him rifling through papers, his face tight with irritation as I entered. Behind an ugly painting, I glimpsed a safe, a report inside, its numbers screaming fraud. Tax evasion, maybe worse. He slammed it shut, unaware I had seen it, unaware that the document would become my weapon. I paced the living room, the floorboards groaning under each step, every creak echoing like a drumbeat of fate. The office key I had claimed to toss away had never left my possession. It was hidden among Eric's things, in a rusted box marked faintly with bright path. I placed it beside her photo, a vow forming in my mind as precise and sharp as the edges of the paper. At the kitchen table I began scribbling names, contacts who would help me navigate the coming storm, a journalist I trusted, a lawyer who owed me. My phone buzzed. Tom's gruff voice answered. "Louis, you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, hiding the fire that burned in me. "Need advice?" "George is hiding something, financial, serious." A pause. "Be careful," he warned. "He's not the kid you raised." The words settled around me like a cold shadow, but I welcomed it. The game was set, the pieces moving into place. Justice wasn't a threat, it was inevitable. Tom's warning lingered like a shadow as I hung up the phone. The words, "be careful." "He's not the kid you raised," circled in my mind, heavy, deliberate, almost mocking. Was I truly ready to destroy my own son? The thought knotted in my chest, But then Eric's face floated into my mind, serene and resolute. She'd want justice, not mercy. She'd never have let me settle for half measures or indulgent sentimentality. I pictured George's office, the safe hidden behind his gaudy painting, a silent sentinel holding the evidence of his greed and Isabel's complicity. The combination had teased me in my imagination countless times, a puzzle I would finally solve tonight. My coffee cup tipped over on the table, spilling bitter brown liquid like a prelude, staining documents, pooling around my hands, a mess that mirrored what was coming. I grabbed my coat, the familiar weight of the rusted office key pressing cold into my palm. Tonight I would reclaim what was mine. Every sacrifice, every hour, every sleepless night, every dollar invested in Bright Path Solutions had led to this moment. I walked through the back alley of the building, rain slicked from earlier storms, the night quiet but alive with tension. Shadows danced across the brick walls, shifting as a stray cat scuttled past, a fleeting observer to the coming reckoning. The memory of George shoving the report behind that painting flashed in my mind. His hands trembled ever so slightly, the arrogance of a boy confident in his unearned power. A month ago I had seen it, and tonight I would take it back. The metal of the door groaned as the old key turned, each click resonating like a heartbeat in the empty building. I froze for a moment, listening. No alarms, no footsteps, just the soft, eerie hum of fluorescent lights above and the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. I slipped inside, every movement deliberate. My shoes whispered on the tile, a careful rhythm that matched the pulsing of my blood. Cameras blinked faintly overhead, but I knew every blind spot, every angle. I had walked these halls for years, learning them like the lines of my own hand. The corridors stretched ahead, shadows pooling in corners, but I kept moving, quiet, methodical, as if the building itself knew I was no ordinary intruder. George's office came into view, its polished wood door imposing, almost taunting. My heart thudded in my chest, but my hand remained steady, the key of vengeance already in my mind. Inside, the familiar scent of his cologne greeted me, sharp, smug, a reminder of the arrogance I would now punish. The painting above his desk, a garish, abstract mess, was more than decor. It was the gateway to the truth. My fingers brushed its edges as I eased it off the wall, wincing as the frame grazed the floor. The safe revealed itself, cold steel staring back, the dial icy under my fingertips. I breathed slowly, feeling the tension coil and stretch like a spring. I tried George's birthday, ironic, bitter, and click. The lock yielded. Inside lay the report, a thin stack of papers that screamed with the truth, fraud, tax evasion, offshore accounts enough to bury him. A photo slipped out, George and Isabel smiling smugly, completely unaware that the reckoning had begun. My jaw tightened. I stuffed the report into my jacket, the weight of justice pressing against my ribs like a living thing. Footsteps shattered the quiet, heavy and deliberate. A guard. My body reacted before my mind fully registered. I dove under the desk, knees scraping the carpet, teeth gritting as adrenaline flooded me. The door creaked open, and a flashlight beam swept the room, pausing on the painting leaning against the wall. My breath caught in my throat. The guard muttered into his radio, confirming all was clear, then left. Seconds stretched like hours, each tick of the clock a drumbeat of suspense. Eric's photo pressed against my chest, warmth grounding me, reminding me why this had to happen. When the coast cleared, I slid out from under the desk, careful, deliberate. The report still tucked against my side. Outside, the air was sharp and biting. Rain-slicked streets gleaming under the faint glow of distant streetlights. I hurried down the alley, senses alert, every shadow a potential threat. A car engine purred nearby, headlights slicing through the dark, sending a jolt of caution through me. My pulse raced, but I stayed calm, hiding the report deeper into my jacket as I vanished into the night. The city seemed alive, indifferent, horns blaring, footsteps echoing, oblivious to the storm brewing in my hands. Back at my kitchen table, the battle began. The report spread before me like a map, a blueprint of George's ruin. Coffee steamed in a chipped mug, its bitterness grounding me as I traced numbers and accounts, connections and loopholes. Eric's photo sat nearby, her eyes steady, almost whispering, "Be smarter, not louder." I smiled at the reminder, letting it solidify my plan. Every move from here on out would be calculated, precise, devastating. No noise, no theatrics, just cold, relentless strategy. Tonight, the boy who had spat on my legacy would feel the weight of the truth. The report's numbers told a story darker than I had imagined. Fake invoices, hidden accounts, and Isabel's signature etched on nearly every page. George was the face, but she was the brain, the quiet architect behind the empire of lies. I traced a line with my finger, anger simmering like molten metal beneath my skin. 11 years of my sweat, nights away from Eric, from family, had been twisted into a web of deception.
Not anymore.
I scanned each page carefully, the old printer whirring like a quiet ally, faithfully reproducing the proof of their treachery. The original went into my home safe, a squat, unassuming box, tucked in the closet, a darkly ironic mirror to George's own safe, now storing his secrets in plain sight. My pen scratched a list across a yellowed pad. Journalist, lawyer, proof, connections. No names yet, no dates, just steps to keep momentum moving, a rhythm to match the storm in my mind. I dialed Mark, a reporter I had known for years, his instincts sharp, his discretion absolute. "Got something big?" I asked, keeping my voice low.
Off the record?
His tone was wary. "Lewis, this about Bright Path?" "George has been dodging me," I said. "You'll see. Check your Dropbox tomorrow." I hung up, hands steady, heart racing, thoughts spinning in a tight cyclone. Could I trust him? Did I have any other choice? The house creaked warm and quiet, a stark contrast to the storm in my head. Eric's photo watched me from the table, her eyes steady and knowing, a reminder of why I fought. I locked the safe, whispering under my breath, "Your moves are over, George." My plan was taking shape. Every piece was a step, deliberate, precise, toward the justice that had been denied to me for far too long. A knock at the door jolted me, sharp and insistent, far too late for neighbors to notice. I hid the copy under a folded newspaper, the paper warm and weighty against my hand, then grabbed my coat and the old safe key from the table. My pulse quickened as I moved across the floorboards, their groans betraying my every step. Outside, the city hummed awake, Chicago alive with the rush of morning. I walked to a cafe, the aroma of coffee and pastries thick in the air, and slipped into a corner booth, keeping the report hidden in a plain, unassuming envelope. Mark slid into the seat across from me, notebook worn, eyes sharp, scanning me with caution.
"This better be good, Lewis," he said, tapping his pen against the table.
I pushed the envelope forward, calm but tense. "Read it."
"No names yet." My hands twitched despite my best effort to stay composed.
And Eric's photo, tucked in my wallet, pressed against me like a talisman. Steadying my resolve, Mark skimmed the pages, his brow furrowing, his lips pressing into a tight line. "This is explosive." "Bright Path is done," he muttered under his breath. I leaned back, letting the tension ebb, just enough to feel control. "If this leaks, will it dig?" I asked. He nodded, silent confirmation, promising patience and precision. "Give me a week," he said finally. I stood, leaving the envelope on the table, the weight of the coming storm heavy in my chest. Outside, Chicago's streets pulsed with life, footsteps and car engines blending into a chaotic symphony. For the first time in days, I felt alive. George's mocking laugh echoed in my memory, the cruel dismissal, the betrayal, the fire that had been burning in me for months.
Not anymore.
Tonight, The game had changed, and I held the hand that would decide the outcome. Miles away, George's office was descending into chaos. Papers were strewn across his glass desk, some curling at the edges, others smeared with coffee rings and fingerprints. A cracked phone screen glinted under the harsh office lights like an accusing eye. Isabel paced, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, echoing like gunshots in the tense room. "Someone talked," she hissed, gripping her phone so tightly the knuckles whitened.
"Contacts."
A reporter sniffing around.
"My sources. They're compromised." George slammed a fist onto the desk, the impact sending a glass tumbling and shattering across the floor.
He bent to retrieve it, his hands trembling slightly.
"You said the report was secure."
Panic seeped into his voice, cracking the facade he'd built over years of arrogance and control. Isabel's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Maybe your old man wasn't as clueless as you thought," she said sharply, sweeping the shards into a bin with precise, almost surgical movements. George froze, a ghost of fear flickering across his face. The office that had once been his domain, a palace of power and illusion, now felt alien and fragile. Meanwhile, I drove home, the night's tension still coiling through my veins. I checked my phone repeatedly for Mark's confirmation, the city blurring past like streaks of light and motion. Chicago hummed around me, indifferent to my storm, yet its energy fueled me, a silent partner in my vengeance.
I had struck first, and it felt intoxicating.
But a chill ran down my spine when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You made a mistake." My fingers tightened around the wheel. The glow from the screen harsh and accusing in the dim interior of my car. Hours earlier, in the morning haze of the cafe, I had settled into a shadowed corner, a plain envelope resting in my hands, its weight far heavier than the paper it contained. Ed Marshall, a journalist I trusted, slid into the booth, droplets of Chicago drizzle clinging to his coat.
His eyes scanned me sharply.
"This better be worth my time, Lewis," he said lowly, voice cautious but curious. I slid the envelope across the sticky table. "No names?" "Just read," I said evenly, brushing my fingers against Eric's photo tucked in my wallet. A talisman, a steadying presence. Ed opened it carefully, skimming the damning numbers. His pen tapping halted. "Bright Path is cooked if this is real," he muttered, eyes narrowing. "Who's your source?" "You don't need that yet," I replied, leaning back, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Dig, you'll find more." He nodded silently, tucking the envelope away, a co-conspirator now in my quiet war.
I left, stepping into the city's pulse.
Horns blared, pedestrians surged past, the world alive, and for the first time since George's betrayal, I felt the scales tipping.
His sneer, the cruel words dismissing me as a relic.
Burned in my memory. Not today. Back in George's office, chaos reigned unchecked. Isabel stood near the window, phone pressed to her ear, jaw tight.
"A reporter's got something," she hissed, bracelet catching the light, glinting like a warning. "Numbers are numbers."
George's face paled, papers scattering as his world unraveled. A coffee mug teetered precariously forgotten, and he shouted, voice raw and cracking, "You swore that safe was secure." Isabel's eyes, cold and sharp as the glass walls around them, met his.
"Don't pin this on me."
"Your father was poking around, wasn't he?" George froze, realization and fear flickering across his face. The walls of his empire, once solid and impenetrable, now seemed fragile, glass-thin, ready to shatter with the truth. He yanked open the safe, breath shallow, palms slick with sweat, only to find dust and emptiness where the report had been. Panic rippled through George's veins, his carefully constructed facade cracking under the weight of sudden vulnerability. I drove home, oblivious to their chaos, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror for tales, every reflection and passing shadow a potential threat. Chicago's neon-lit streets blurred past, its rhythm like a pulse in my chest, energizing me with each turn. My first strike had landed and it felt electric, a surge of vindication that coursed through my veins. Eric's photo, tucked safely against my heart, felt heavier than usual, a nod of approval from the memory of her unwavering strength. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number.
"You're playing a dangerous game." My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white, the city lights streaking past in a dizzying blur.
In George's office, the atmosphere was suffocating, thick with his expensive cologne and Isabel's sharp perfume. The safe gaped open, mocking him with its emptiness. "It's gone," he whispered, voice barely audible, trembling as he slammed the heavy door shut. Isabel leaned against the desk, fingers tapping a precise rhythm, her eyes narrowing with ice-cold calculation. "We need to find who did this, now!" Her phone rang and she barked into it. "Vaughn, it's me. Someone stole from us. I want names, starting now." A grunt of acknowledgement from the private detective on the line. "Start with Lewis Collins," Isabel added, eyes flicking to George. "He's not as broken as you think." George's jaw clenched, vein pulsing at the temple, a man trapped between fear and fury. Meanwhile, my suburban home offered a fragile shield of silence. I sat in the living room, TV muted, the scrolling news ticker hinting at Brightpath's sudden troubles, a subtle reflection of the storm I had unleashed. My fingers traced the edges of Eric's old book, where I'd hidden the original report, the worn leather smelling faintly of time, grounding me, reminding me of what and who I fought for. I had struck hard, yet the memory of that text, dangerous game, gnawed at my thoughts, a warning and a challenge both. The sudden ring of the phone shattered the fragile quiet. George's name flashed across the screen. I inhaled slowly, voice steady despite the adrenaline coiling in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked, careful. His tone was low, venomous. "Don't play dumb, Dad." I pictured his younger eyes, once full of admiration, now twisted in malice. "You're paranoid, George," I replied, hanging up before the venom could seep further.
My pulse raced. Had he guessed?
Outside, the neighborhood slept, unaware of the silent war unfolding in my home. I checked each lock, the key cold and metallic against my palm, a reminder that George's reach was real. He was hunting me. My hand rested on Eric's book, now beside her photograph, a silent vow whispering through me. I won't stop. The floorboards creaked beneath me, a shadow flickered past the window. Too fast to be a neighbor, too deliberate to be coincidence. I froze, muscles taut, hand instinctively finding the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. The tension was almost palpable, the silence thick as ink. Later, in the lawyer's office, the air smelled of aged wood and ink, shelves heavy with tomes of legal authority. I sat across from Clara, my old friend turned attorney, her eyes scanning the stack of Eric's letters spread across the desk between us. Each letter carried a weight, reminders of promises, love, and the life I had fought to protect. Every creased page, every inked word was a step in the plan, a piece of the puzzle that would ensure George and Isabel's empire of lies would crumble. "These prove I found a bright path," I said, my voice firm but steady, carrying the weight of years of betrayal and sacrifice. George had stolen my share, yes, but these documents, these letters, were proof of my claim, proof that justice had a foundation beyond anger. Clara's eyes widened as she read each page, lingering over Eric's precise handwriting detailing our early days, her legal signature anchoring every memory, every claim. Each word seemed to pulse with the life we had built together, the dreams we had nurtured, and the promises George had shattered. I held back a shiver as memories surfaced, the quiet evenings poring over contracts with Eric, her voice calm but insistent, reminding me to protect what was ours, her foresight a shield in times I hadn't realized I would need it. Clara's pen scratched across her notepad as she nodded. "We can file a suit.
It's solid, Lewis, but risky, she said.
Risky, yes, but worth it. I touched Eric's photo tucked in my pocket, feeling her strength steadying me, whispering courage I didn't even know I still had. The courthouse loomed ahead, a temple of order and judgment. Inside, the air was thick with murmurs, whispers bouncing off marble walls, punctuated by the squeak of chairs as lawyers, clients, and journalists shifted in their seats. I stood tall, my suit crisp and pressed, a shield of dignity over a heart that still throbbed with old pain. Clara presented our case with precision, her voice calm but commanding, turning every detail of Eric's letters into undeniable proof. George sat across the room, his face a mask of fury, jaw tight, eyes flicking nervously as he tried to gauge how much I had prepared. Isabel leaned close, whispering sharp instructions into his ear, her bracelet catching the light like a weapon as her words drove home the gravity of our position. I have lived a life shaped by loyalty, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Some might say I was tested too harshly, but I have always believed that challenges reveal the strength within us. My family, the people I trusted most, became the greatest trials I ever faced.
George, Isabel!
Even those I loved could wound as deeply as any stranger. Yet, through it all, I learned that resilience is not built in comfort. It is forged in confrontation, in standing firm when the world seems against you. The day the courtroom fell silent is etched in my memory. I remember the sharp rap of the judge's gavel demanding answers that George could not give. His protests were loud, venomous, meant to intimidate, but they were hollow against the evidence I carried. The letters from Eric, each word precise, each sentiment undeniable. Clara held them up like a beacon of truth, and in that moment I understood the weight of patience and the power of integrity. Justice was mine to see, but it came with the sting of loss, the recognition of all that had been taken from me. Even after the verdict, the shadows lingered. George confronted me in the corridors, breath hot, eyes blazing with fury. I met his gaze unflinching. "You started this, son?" I said.
And I meant it.
In the park later, the crunch of damp leaves under my boots reminded me how far we had all strayed from the innocence of the past, the boy clutching my hand, promising loyalty, and the girl who had once laughed so freely in the sunlight. I sat on a weathered bench, Eric's photo pressed to my chest, and let the memories steady me, letting the weight of victory and grief settle together. He sat across from me, his hands twisting the cuff of his expensive shirt. "Dad," he started, his voice low. "Stop this. The lawsuit, the investigation, call it off." Isabel leaned forward, her bracelet glinting in the grey light. "We'll cut you in."
Money, shares, whatever you want. I stared at him. My son now a stranger.
"You think I'd sell my dignity?" My words were calm, but they cut. George flinched, his jaw tight.
I made mistakes, he said.
"Softer now, but we're family."
Remember when we built that model plane?
"You and me." Isabel's lips curled. "Don't be stubborn, Lewis. Push this further and it'll get messy." Her thread hung in the air, but her voice cracked, betraying her. I stood, my shadow long across the grass.
You stole my life, George.
"Now you pay?" I walked away, their pleas fading behind me. At home, the house wrapped me in its familiar creak and warmth. Eric's letters lay on the kitchen table, their ink a map of my fight. I traced her handwriting, each word a vow. The lawsuit was tomorrow, my final strike. George's begging echoed, but I pushed it down. He wasn't my boy anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. "Court tomorrow, be ready." I set the letters aside, my fingers brushing the key on the table. A noise outside, low like footsteps on gravel, made me pause. I stepped to the window, the curtain heavy in my hand. The courtroom buzzed, a hive of whispers and shifting chairs. I sat in the front row, Eric's letters in my briefcase, their weight anchoring me. The judge's voice cut through the noise, steady and final. Bright Path Solutions is restored to Lewis Collins. George Collins and Isabel Wilson are found guilty of fraud. The gavel fell sharp as a blade. George's face drained of colour, his tie askew. Isabel gripped her purse, her knuckles white, her eyes darting to the exit. Reporter scribbled furiously, their cameras flashing. The news had broken. Ed's investigation, fueled by my report, laid their schemes bare. Eric's words echoed in my mind. Truth always wins. She was right. Handcuffs clicked as officers approached. George's shout, "This is a lie," bounced off the marble walls, but it was hollow. Isabel's head bowed, her defiance crumbling.
I watched, my heart steady but heavy.
Justice, not joy, filled me. An old colleague in the crowd met my eyes, her nod a quiet salute. Outside, Chicago streets were cold, the wind carrying the scent of wet asphalt. Reporters swarmed, their questions a blur. I pushed past, my coat flapping, and reached my car. The radio hummed with news. Bright Path was bankrupt, its glass tower now a husk. I exhaled, the weight of years lifting but not gone. I glanced at Eric's photo tucked in my wallet. "Almost done," I whispered. Her smile held me together. My phone rang, the screen glowing with an unknown number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button, the city's pulse loud around me. The cemetery was still, its air heavy with the scent of earth and fading flowers. I stood before Eric's grave, her photo in my hand, its edges soft from years of touch. The stone was cool under my fingers as I spoke. "It's over, love. The company's mine again. George and Isabel, they're done." A breeze stirred the leaves, her answer in the silence. I'd chosen justice, not forgiveness, just as she taught me to stand tall. A memory surfaced, Eric laughing as we danced in our old kitchen, her voice promising we'd face anything together.
I kept that promise.
The lawsuit, the report, her letters, they brought truth to light. I knelt, planting a small flower by her stone, its roots a new beginning. At home, the house welcomed me with its familiar creak. Eric's letters rested on the table, their work done. I wouldn't rebuild Bright Path. Its assets would go to charity, schools, shelters, places that mattered. My lawyer called, confirming the transfer.
"You're free, Lewis," he said. I smiled.
Sinking into my armchair, its leather warm. The fight had changed me, but peace settled now, soft as evening light. I placed Eric's photo on the mantel, her eyes bright. My phone buzzed. A letter in the mail from an old friend offering a new project. I left it unopened, the envelope catching the sunset's glow. I have learned that life is measured not only by the battles we fight, but by how we recover from them. I cleared the remnants of conflict from my home, placing letters, lawsuits, and photographs in their rightful place, a testament to both struggle and survival. I reconnected with old friends, found solace in small joys, and allowed the world outside to remind me that life continues even after devastation. Fishing trips, laughter, the quiet hum of ordinary days, they became my anchors, my proofs that the world could still offer peace. Looking back, I understand now that love, integrity, and patience define us far more than anger or revenge ever could. Justice was achieved, yes, but peace came only when I let go of what I could not control.
Holding only what truly mattered. The memory of those I loved, the truth I fought to protect.
And the knowledge that I had lived as honorably as I could. This is my story. Of loss and love, of betrayal and triumph, of rage tempered by clarity, and of a life reclaimed from the shadows. I am Henry Collins, and I have lived to tell it, not with bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of a man who knows he stood for what was right.
Even when it cost everything. Outside the world hummed, but I was still.
My hand resting on the key that had unlocked so much. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.